I have dedicated my life to the struggle. You have upheld the dignity and the stature of the African child in the entire universe. You have brought back freedom and democracy into the African continent. To Today we speak unity in diversity. Today we speak African Renaissance. Radical economic transformation. Today we speak decommodification of commodities. Today we speak African unity. Ihlabena khweleyo khakhailongo vyamamadiba umalala jongile mhlenqa magusha kwimilonde ekhaya elancancathini makhakakhaka elathoma amakhoba namakhoba ngetshutya nangoncubo emfazweni atadiliza ishumi lamadoda ngaxeshanye kahlele madoda kahlele amaphosa kahle mfokazimane ngayikhokoncikanyamba ngoba thina safuna ukudla mazimba Njabambeki once said, I am an African. I owe my being to the hills and the valleys, the mountains and the plains, the rivers, the seas, the trees, the flowers, the deserts, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. My body has frozen in our latter day snow. It has thawed in the warmth of the sunshine and melted in the heat of the midday sun. The crack and the rumble of the summer thunders, lest by startling lightning, have been the cause of both trembling and of hope. The dramatic sights of the mighty Drakensberg, the soil-colored waters of the Ligwa, Iqilino-Tugela, and the sands of the Khalahati have all been the panels of the set on the natural stage, of which we act out the foolish deeds of the fear of the day. At times and in fear, I've wondered if I should concede the equal citizenship of our country to the lion and the leopard, the elephant and the springbok, the black mamba, the hyena, and the pestilential mosquito. Remember, we are the ones we've been waiting for. Remember, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the grandchildren of Nunhausen. Yes. We are the great children of the warrior men and women that inside the Kukunelet. The patriots in purple and Tatoyo took to battle. The soldiers, Mushasha and Gugunyane, taught us never to dishonor the cause of freedom. So keep on keeping on. Keep on digging deep that hive of prestigious knowledge and wisdom, uprooting the deadly spray poison of ignorance, which leads to breaking relationships, personal destruction, confusion, and disorderly living. Wow! You are the gold! You are the global gold!
Ladies and gentlemen, Graca Machel izandla sililizele intombi yabambangeni Jessica. Siyabulela kakhulu sisi wami ngenhliziyo yethu sonke. Ayi! Ngesixhosa Jessica siyazalana asinothakathana. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a day. And you know, we move to the suburbs and we forget our core, which is what Sis Jess was saying. We forget why we are here and we forget that we are indeed, Sis Jessica, the ancestors' prayers, the answer to their prayers, because they've prayed for us for generations and generations. So when we wake up today, and most of South Africa is under rainfall, we remember that everything is connected. We remember that energy cannot be destroyed or created. We remember that it can only be transferred and transformed. So as the Xhosa people who under Kamata believe that everything is connected, it is no coincidence that the heavens opened today. Amen. Amen. It is no coincidence that the heavens will continue to open for the rest of the day. Because on this day, when the heavens took Udata, it rained for 2 weeks. Was it 3? I stand to be corrected, Njabulo. It rained for 3 weeks. Until we let him go of flesh and we allowed him to join Abapant. That is what we believe as a Xhosa people. And this is why Jess came in and she introduced every single ancestor that is in this room with us today. In the name of Utata Wetu. We thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we say, Kamako, Makwande. There was a song, Bahleli bonke etilongweni. Bahleli bonke kwanongqongqo. It means they were all together in jail. They were all together in prison. And today, the day Tatu Sobukwe was born, it's the very same day God took one of his best friends, Dad. Can we have a moment of silence? I'm overwhelmed. I'm sure you are too. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you because we are here to remember someone who was godly while on earth. We say kwaXhosa, ebesisinyanya esiphilayo, a living ancestor. Please, if you're into social media, if you're here with the media, our hashtag today, we're here, siyamkhumbula, remembering Mandela. Hashtag remembering Mandela. We started an incredible journey 10 months ago. And today we are here to say, yes, we remember that he left us on this day. But next month, we start celebrating his centenary. How profound. I always say to my children, blessed are we to have walked this earth while he was still alive. Blessed are some of us to have felt him physically, felt him spiritually, have been honored to have an audience with him. Blessed are we, and in his remembrance, we don't have a choice but to do something for the children, for our legacy, and for the legacy of a man and family who gave up so much for us because we are so beautiful as the children of Africa. I'd like to introduce myself officially. My name is Unathi. May I do it culturally. Ngokokuzalwa ndingokwaNkayi, ndatshatela kwaMsengana ndazala uBhele. Ndingumamthunzi, uHompo, uPepepe, uQabele wenu inja ifanga ihlela inyukwana. Ndizalwa kulo mzi Bathembu, Mantande, Ongqolo Msilo yemyemo vele bambhentsele. Hence we say we are all connected. I'm truly honored to have started this journey with the Nelson Mandela Foundation 10 months ago, but truly honored to make sure that we ignite it so that it's unforgettable for the rest of our time. I'd like to welcome the chairman of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Professor Njabulo Ndebele.
And good evening to you all. I'm delighted to welcome you all this evening on behalf of the Nelson Mandela Foundation Board of Trustees, and a good evening to you all again. Thank you for being with us and for supporting our continuing work. Before I proceed, I would like to recognize some important guests here tonight, and these include members of the Mandela family, Mama Graca Machel and granddaughter Ndebele Mandela, and struggle stalwarts, lawyer, Madiba's lawyer, George Bezos, and Miss Sophie De Bruyn, and trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation who are here. And finally, our speakers tonight, Minister Jeff Radebe, who will address us through a different medium. But General Bantu Holomisa is here in person, and we look forward to hearing from him. Today's event evokes both sadness and inspiration. In the month of December, 4 years ago, we said our last goodbyes to Madiba. I think most of us would agree that South Africa's travails, and indeed global travails, have become dramatically acuter in the years since his passing. it is easy to feel overwhelmed as one tragedy after another unfolds. We remember the Life Esidimeni tragedy right here in Gauteng, and further away, the horrific images of modern-day slavery in Libya and the genocides unfolding in Yemen and Myanmar. They feel especially overwhelming, I would argue, in the absence of Madiba, and given the scarcity of the high-quality leadership exemplified by him. We still miss him, and we are still inspired by him to keep working hard, to keep fighting the good fight, as we heard from the poet, to keep believing in the South Africa he dreamed of and sacrificed so much for. That sense of believing in our country is absolutely vital for all of us to keep holding on to. The struggles for justice continue, and in truth, recent months have given us cause to celebrate both the number of South Africans engaged in these struggles and the number of little victories that have been won. For instance, the fact that those responsible for Life Esidimeni are being held to account is a victory in itself, and of the power of public concern, whose voice can and should grow louder and louder and louder. By the same token, we have seen civil society and institutions of state, such as Parliament itself, working together in an effective process to liberate our public broadcaster, for example, from the tentacles of state capture. We have seen corrupt officials removed from office, and in this regard, I suppose more and more must follow and step down. But we have seen courageous public servants resisting obscene pressure to capitulate to actions designed to destroy public institutions and weaken the capacity and capability of the state to serve its people and meet their varied needs. We never thought we would face personifications of evil in this kind of stark manner. But we do know, to our deepening maturity as a nation, that we too, in the time of freedom, are capable of the evil we always thought was only out there, because we have confirmed it to be right here as well. We struggle now within us for the better side of us to triumph. This is the context within which we pause for a moment to remember the life and work of Madiba and to reflect on our own lives and the contributions we are making and need to continue to make to achieve the vision of those to be who we should be as a people and the country we should live in. The meaning of Nelson Mandela remains wonderfully personal. There are those in the audience this evening who spent years by his side as a family member or associate, those who were comrades of his or who worked in support of him. Also in the audience are those who never met him, whose only understanding of him is through the recollections of others. The words penned in books and images on canvases, photos, or videos. Yet for all of us here, there is a connection to Madiba. Unlike many other leaders who have led us and passed on, Madiba occupies a unique space defined by a legacy to which all of us can lay claim. And all of us have a deeply personal experience in that connection. experience of Madiba abound, as they should. This is the rationale for the exhibition we are launching today that you may have seen as you were coming in. Unthreading Nelson Mandela. Big narratives, meta-narratives if you like, dominate public representations of his life and his work. The exhibition acknowledges that and offers a reflection of them. It also attempts to create space for deconstruction, for unthreading the apparently seamless tapestry. In that space, you will hear the voices of numerous people engaged by the exhibition's designers in the process of creation, mostly young people, people without big reputations as yet, people with difficult questions, so-called ordinary South Africans who every day these days reveal their extraordinary potential. We are all grateful to those who contributed threads and unthreadings for this exhibition. Some of you are here tonight, and we are grateful to Totem Media for partnering with us on what is an unconventional creation. As you might have already seen, Unthreading Nelson Mandela engages both conceptually and spatially with the Foundation's permanent exhibition on the life and times of Madiba. The latter is thus renewed and even transformed. Today we are also proud to announce that the permanent exhibition now has a layer of Braille translation to all its textual elements. This gives visitors who are visually impaired a richer experience of our resources, something I believe Madiba would have been extremely proud of. Arguably, this is something we should have introduced years ago. We thank Lesotho Community Services for engaging with us on the issue and then going the extra mile in bringing it to fruition. A big thank you to the Lesotho team. Today marks the Foundation's last big event of 2017. When next we gather, it will be 2018, the year which marks the centenary of our founder's birth. It will, of course, be a big year for us. Our plans and objectives will be outlined to you just now by the Chief Executive Officer, Sello Hatang. Let me just say one thing about it in anticipation of his speech. Remembering Madiba obviously will be a big part of the program, the archive and the legacy. But the most important dimension of the program will be the work we do next year that opens out the future, that makes the future. A decade ago, Madiba spoke in this auditorium and announced to the world the Foundation's new mandate to do memory work. Amongst other things, he offered the following powerful directive. He said, all of us tend to associate archives and museums with remembering of the past, but that is only part of their work. If justice is their most important shaping influence, then they are also about making the future. The Foundation, I believe, is good at remembering. We have an extraordinary research and archive team. We publish best-selling books. We do innovative exhibitions. We have a cutting-edge digitization program, and so on and so on. But our rationale for existing is a commitment to be busy making a liberated future. A passion for that future is what shapes everything we do, including the selection of guest speakers at events like this one. On that note, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome to the podium General Bantu Holomisa. He is, of course, the leader of the United Democratic Movement. He was for a very short time leader of the Transkei Bantustan. He is a respected public figure, also like Madiba, something of a troublemaker. But, a member of parliament, a person who Madiba came to trust and to have great affection for, a person who can always be relied on to name a spade, and a person who has never hesitated to pick up the spade when shoveling is required. So welcome what I call my all-time general, Holomisa. We look forward to being excited by you tonight.
Oh, Bantu is there. Name God, he's a cool specialist. Our program director, a chairperson and chief executive officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mama Graca, and members of the Mandela family, the board members, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. When Madiba passed away 4 years ago, a great sense of loss filled the nation, and a resounding note of sadness reverberated across the globe. Today, we remember his departure, reflect on his life as well as the contribution he made to South Africa and the world. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this event. The world had lost one of the great icons of the last century. The country had lost its guiding light, its moral beacon. For me, it was the loss of a mentor and friend. I first met Madiba after his release in 1990. During my visit to his Soweto house, Mrs. Winnie Mandela Madikizela Mandela expressed legitimate concerns about Madiba's safety and security. For obvious reasons, it would not have been proper to ask F.W. de Klerk's government to provide for his security. She thought I might be able to assist, and I was honored to do so. I immediately contacted the then Transkei Defense Force commander, General T.T. Matanzima. He arranged that two trusted officers would at all times be at Madiba's side until the personnel of the African National Congress Armed Wing MK returned from exile. During those early years, he frequently invited me to travel with him locally and internationally. He had introduced himself to star-struck world leaders and simultaneously sought to raise funds for the ANC. On our local trips, we met the kings, Amakosi, and religious groupings to brief them about the pending negotiations to free South Africans. Our first stop, soon after his release in February 1990, was in Namibia to celebrate its independence. We went to the United Nations in 1992 and 1993. We also paid visits to countries like the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, the Netherlands, France, as well as Norway, where Madiba and Mr. de Klerk received their Nobel Peace Prize. Although he had not yet won any election, Madiba was treated like a president-elect and was afforded the high-level protocol associated with this status. The reason why I am sharing a little of this history is because I soon realized that Madiba had an impressive, magnetic personality as well as a commanding presence. He was also a consummate, a master of the art of persuasion. But he was not schooled in some of the aspects of being a statesman, and I helped him navigate numerous protocol issues. For example, one of the duties we asked him to dispense of had been to inspect military guards of honor. The first one was at the Transkei military base and another at the Independence Stadium in Umtata. I explained it to him. I said, Tata, when you perform this duty, it is not necessary to shake each soldier's hand. As we are all aware, Madiba habitually greeted everyone he met and asked, "How are you?" in that most recognizable voice of his. Let me now talk about Madiba, who defused a ticking bomb. South Africa had entered an extraordinary period with the eyes of the world upon us. We were in the middle of doing something exceptional. That is the process of ending a vicious, racist, authoritarian regime. We achieved this relatively peacefully through a carefully orchestrated transition to democracy. Regarding this history, there are two instances that come to mind where Madiba's exceptional leadership diffused potentially explosive situations. The first was when we went to New York, where Madiba, Mr. Makwetu of the PAC, Prince Mahlangu, and I addressed the UN Security Council and asked for intervention and monitoring during the period where the so-called black-on-black violence was at a peak. The second was when Chris Hani was assassinated by a far right-wing anti-communist. On that day, Madiba asked me to accompany him from Umtata to Johannesburg, where we were received by the SACP General Secretary Joe Slovo, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Jill Marcus. From there, Madiba went to address the nation, live on the public broadcaster. This atrocity had brought the left and the right to a head-on confrontation. If Madiba had not practiced sensible, responsible leadership, you might agree that South Africa would have been dumped into civil war. It was at this stage that the South African Communist Party's Secretary General, Joe Slovo, proposed the so-called sunset clauses. The ANC and its allies interrogated this proposal and the implications thereof. Chris's assassination brought home the stark reality that violent conflict was imminent, and it therefore made sense that the only peaceful solution was to apply principled compromise. Once that concession was made, Madiba, however, demanded a date for elections. This left nobody in anybody's doubt that he meant business. He was also not shy to explain to South Africans and the world that there was still a tremendous amount of work to be done in fulfilling the objective of freeing South Africans. Indeed, Madiba was aware that in the conflict between black and white in South Africa, there were no winners, but the country was victorious in the end. What happened to the tone and example Madiba set? I would like to move to the question of what happened to the tone and example Madiba set. After these volatile years, a golden period followed. Madiba had the wisdom and presence of mind to surround himself with capable individuals. The caliber of the people in his cabinet was just at a higher level than what we have today. He almost uncannily managed to unite a deeply divided nation. At the time, there had also been a deep skepticism from both black and white quarters that the new South Africa project would fail. Yet he inspired everyone to trust in his leadership. Under his administration, government managed to make tremendous strides in bettering the lives of the formerly disadvantaged. There was, for instance, a remarkable improvement in the provision of electricity, water and housing to previously disadvantaged communities, especially in the rural areas. We used to sit together and make phone calls to many big business leaders. With his considerable powers of persuasion, he coaxed them to partner in building schools, clinics, hospitals, etc. Who would ever forget his dream of a hospital dedicated to kids? Indeed, his influence on international celebrities, most notable Miss Oprah Winfrey, who built a school for girls in Henley on Klip near Merton, made tangible differences to many South Africa's lives. The other project I remind you of was the annual Christmas gathering at Konu, where at one stage, no less than 75,000 children received their gifts from Madiba and Miss Winfrey. Now, just over 2 decades later, despite considerable changes for the better, there is a sour taste in our mouth. Don't you agree? At the moment, there is a universal sense of bitter frustration and delusionment among South Africans across the board. In the context of the values Madiba stood for, we have a sense of collective shame that we are compelled to ask ourselves an uncomfortable question. How did we let the great promise of the Mandela years slip away unfulfilled? So on the 4th anniversary of his passing, we should find answers to the following questions. 1, how can we reclaim the lost ground and live up to the standards that Madiba set? And 2, which lessons from his life can we apply to assist us in this endeavor? The year that would have seen his 100th birthday present a vital opportunity to do what we perhaps did not do 4 years ago, and that is to properly reflect on Madiba's legacy and genuinely take stock of the man's life. Mandla Langa's skillfully written book, he said the book's called I Dare Not Linger, shows that there were many aspects of Madiba's leadership that deserve our attention and deep reflection. For one thing, Madiba was not the reconciliation junkie he is often portrayed as. He definitely was a one-nation president who extended the hand of friendship in quite extraordinary ways. His visit to the Groot Crocodile and Orania were remarkable gestures, not to mention the famous donning of the Springbok jersey in front of a packed Ellis Park crowd and captive world audience. But he was far more than that. He was a stern taskmaster. He could sometimes be harsh and overbearing. Even as I experienced this, F.W. de Klerk also had on several times been confronted with this aspect of Madiba's manner. He was also a mischievous fellow. He sometimes tasked me to welcome the former President Mbeki and his deputy president then, Jacob Zuma, in his house, as well as the members of the executive committee. This was quite ironic since I was the leader of another political party. When I asked him why he did this, he said that politics of the African National Congress and those of United Party must be left outside his yard. I tried to correct him that he is not United Party, it's a United Democratic Movement. And then he responded, whatever, Bantu. There were also definite limits to Madiba's reconciliatory style. If you crossed a certain line, he would hit you like a ton of bricks. Equally so, Madiba could display tremendous patience. Quite often he would carefully listen to anyone who had the guts to candidly differ with him. Madiba would then almost verbatim repeat that person's argument to illustrate that he had understood and appreciated his or her point of view. Yet, once he used such words as however or but, you know that you were about to lose the argument. I am very glad to learn that the Nelson Mandela Foundation proposed using the concept of untreading Madiba's life as the guiding theme for the anniversary of his birthday next year. This is a worthy idea. I support it, and we should all support it. Madiba's life must not be reduced to a one-dimensional rendition based only on his role as a reconciler. If we do this, we will allow mythology to trump reality, and we will miss out on many other traits of his character and leadership. Therefore, untreading his life and legacy is a vital project, and I'm grateful to the Foundation for its stellar work in honoring Madiba's legacy and to find practical ways to do so. How befitting that the Foundation's project follows in the footsteps of the commemoration of O.R. Tambo's centenary year. Oliver Tambo had been Madiba's friend and compatriot, who had entrusted him with the ANC's presidency, as we have witnessed. Just as we celebrated the 100 years of O.R. Tambo, this year we will pay the same tribute to Nelson Mandela in 2018. In this regard, I acknowledge the leadership of Sello Hatang, the Nelson Mandela Foundation Chief Executive, who is of course assisted by the Foundation's partners and patrons. I have great admiration for how the Foundation engages with the critical issue of constitutional democracy and ethical leadership in the face of South Africa's current crisis, particularly in the days and weeks that followed Comrade Kathy's death in March this year, which happened to coincide arguably with the lowest point in President Zuma's rule. I just also wish to mention that having kept the Foundation's work in mind, I thought that there is a venture that would fit nicely in your stable. It relates to two matters which were close to Madiba's heart: his concern around deforestation and the maintenance of environmental standards, especially in rural areas and the townships. Yes, it is true that electrification has positively impacted people's lives, but in the bitter winter cold, fire remains the main source of heat and therefore survival. Gathering firewood has become an onerous task as more landscapes are denuded and people must walk great distance to get firewood. There is an unidentifiable gap between people's understanding of the impact of their practices on, for instance, the soil and indigenous vegetation. The message of the long-term benefits of sustainably living in concert with nature must be brought home. Perhaps the Foundation would start an afforestation project that inculcates respect and appreciation of environmental preservation, especially in the light of escalating effects of climate change in South Africa. And thus, a afforestation project could possibly be called the Nelson Mandela Forests, which would inspire people to become environmental activists in their own communities. Part of my sense of deep nostalgia of the 90s is that it was also a golden period of reform and institution building. Madiba understood the need to build strong independent institutions that would endure and serve the people regardless of who would be in power. The travesty of the so-called state capture has hollowed out many of these state institutions. This is an insult to Madiba's legacy. In the same vein, it is difficult to comprehend how some people stooped so low by stealing funds allocated to give Madiba a dignified farewell, as the public protector recently found. This goes beyond commonplace corruption. It is not only immoral, but evil. Former ANC leader in the Nelson Mandela Bay, Crispian Oliver, wrote a book called How to Steal a City. The book is a salutary read which portrays in graphical and shocking details how quickly a group of dishonest individuals can betray the trust of the people. Thinking of the nauseating Gupta leaks, I'm sure you will agree that we now have a new book on the shelves, and it is called How to Steal a Country. You still remember that as far back as 2001, Madiba once said, I quote, "Little did we suspect that our own people, when they got a chance, would be as corrupt as the apartheid regime," close quote. Madiba must have already 16 years ago felt that corruption would destroy the gains of our freedom. As we speak, pervasive corruption, even at the highest level, is scaring off potential investors, and capital outflow is at an all-time high. To top it all off, the ratings agencies are on a daily basis downgrading South Africa to a junk status. As a result, jobs are shed at an alarming rate, which leaves the economically and socially depressed in our country. This situation is undoing the progress we had made in 1993, when I accompanied Madiba to address the UN General Assembly to ask the reversal of sanctions against South Africa. Instead of continuing the unfinished business of fulfilling the dream of a new South Africa, the last few ANC-led administrations have certainly dropped the ball. They did not find sustainable solutions to ensure economic freedom, quality education, good health care, as well as safety and security for our people. The land issue remains a perennial thorn in our nation's side. Institutionalized corruption and the looting of state resources with impunity are the order of the day. We could say that this has become the new normal. Considering that one political party has caused so much damage, we cannot afford to put all our future eggs in one basket. Trusting in the so-called self-correcting nature of the ruling party is living in a fool's paradise. To find lasting solutions to the country's problems, we need to cast a wider net like we did during CODESA. We have taken note of the Nelson Mandela Foundation's recent dialogues, but has the time not come for it to collect all parallel running dialogues of other organizations under one umbrella? If all stakeholders, including government, civil society, and political parties, could participate in a concerted effort, we would be able to generate a unified blueprint for solutions to our country's problems. There is no way that the problems of this country will be solved by one political party. If you believe in that, you are misleading yourself. Any resolutions of such a convention could be referred to Parliament for ratification, just like when F.W. de Klerk's government were tasked to implement CODESA resolutions. This would neutralize the dominance of one party which ignores the people once it ascends to power or position of power. We can no longer delay such a convention given unashamed trampling of the values of people like Steve Biko, Katrada, Albert Luthuli, Nelson Mandela, Lillian Ngoyi, Joe Slovo, Robert Sobukwe, Oliver Tambo, and many others who fought for this country. South Africa is entering an exciting era of truly competitive multi-party democracy. And we need to ask, what can we learn from Madiba's life and his leadership? Firstly, there is the spirit of what I would call principled compromise. Madiba has been described as an extreme pragmatist. Certainly, his approach to power sharing and the transfer of power from the apartheid regime was pragmatic in the sense that tactically and strategically, it was as much about negotiating freedom as it was about fighting for it. None of us should, however, forget that the negotiations were always conducted with one eye on the window, looking at the resistance that was taking place throughout the country. The nationalists knew that if the negotiations broke down, there would be a high price to pay on the streets as the mass democratic movement would not hesitate to make the country ungovernable. Maybe, but rather Madiba had always been quick to remind them of this fact. That is why I prefer to think of his approach as principled compromise. In other words, one makes concessions, but one does so conscious of the red lines. In other words, the non-negotiables. I witnessed this when F.W. de Klerk's government withdrew indemnity for Chris Hani, and we had to house him in the Transkei. Madiba stamped his authority and demanded the withdrawal of the warrant for Chris Hani's arrest, as Madiba put it, quite strongly at the time. Mr. de Klerk had been negotiating in bad faith. Madiba was willing to share power and not dominate. He recognized that the advantages which come with forging consensus and building a social compact comprises of the support of not just your side, but also that of your opponents. The lesson we should learn when it comes to possible future coalitions is that we need to develop the practice thereof, which is fundamentally about sharing power, not power mongering. This will take real skill and level-headed leadership. Considering the possibility of a new government of national unity in 2019, future coalition partners will have to practice principled compromise. As per Madiba's example, there can be no space for a big brother mentality. Another aspect of Madiba's life that I would like to discuss relates to his commitment to constitutionalism and the rule of law. In this respect, we currently have a country that has not only lost its way, but has tarnished Madiba's institutional bequeathal. On the one side of this coin, we should be ashamed of the way in which powerful people, both in public and private sectors, have taken advantage of gaps in institutional arrangements, of those who have done so by exploiting the personal weaknesses of some of our leaders to enrich themselves at the expense of the majority of South Africans. But on the flip side of the coin, we should be proud of the way in which our courts have withstood pressures. Where would we be without an independent judiciary today? Certainly, opposition parties and civil society organizations and the media have claimed their rights and used the Constitution to hold those in power to account. To illustrate what a respectful interaction with the courts is how Madiba conducted himself during the Louis Leite's case, as you know. The High Court found him guilty, and he was there. He presented himself to answer questions, and later he appealed to the appeals court and he won. By so doing, he set the standard of respect for our court system. Towards the end, I want to talk about Madiba's resilience. A very important thread in Madiba's life is his resilience. He suffered. He endured. Through his strength, he inspired millions in this country and throughout the world. South Africa is a resilient country. Look at the way in which we fought back against state capture and the racism fanned by Bill Pottinger and his friends and their friends. Our important institutions, civil society and media, which are resisting capture, state capture, are holding the front line. And despite the inherent pressures of poverty and unemployment, our people also remain resilient. They make sacrifices every day. So in return, they have every right to expect a lot from their leaders. We each have a responsibility to respect the rule of law, defend the Constitution, and insist that those with power go about their business honestly, transparently, and accountably. We must return all state institutions to full working order. State capture must not only be pushed into retreat, but must be defeated once and for all. Those who were captured should be charged, prosecuted, and convicted. Frankly speaking, we will do so. Madiba's legacy, if we do so, Madiba's legacy will be, if we don't do so, Madiba's legacy will be in jeopardy. A large part of Madiba's strength as a leader came from his unrelenting high standards and his lack of tolerance for shoddy work and incompetence. He did not suffer fools easily, nor should we. In conclusion, pulling Madiba's threads together, his legacy entails the following: reconciliation based on principled compromise, a real commitment to the rule of law and constitutionalism, and resilience. Investing in these threads is not only a worthwhile exercise for the country as a collective, but also for each individual. I therefore wish the Nelson Mandela Foundation well in your project of untreading Utata. Good luck with celebrating this milestone next year. Once again, thank you for inviting me today and bestowing on me the honor of sharing some of my thoughts with you. May Madiba rest in peace. Thank you.
It was an event that changed our lives forever. It changed our world as we know it. The kind of event where you ask yourself, do you remember where you were? You do? We all do. How could we not? Because he's the kind of man that inspired the union workers at Mercedes-Benz in East London to go to the CEO and say, okay, we'll work overtime. We'll work after work. You do not have to pay us. but we will build him a Mercedes-Benz with our bare hands. And we want it to be red to symbolize the blood that has been spilt as a sacrifice for us. Because 50 years ago, we wouldn't be sitting together in this room. As a young black girl, as a wise white man. These are the sacrifices that were made for us. And this is why what Mr. Holomisa was saying is vital to our legacy as a South African people. How do we want the world to remember us? Do we want it to be fickle? Do we want it to change our lives forever? And this is a question we have to ask ourselves, and not one party or two, or 7 potential presidential candidates. No. It's a question we have to ask ourselves. Children live what they learn and they learn what they live. We need to lead by example. Dr. Holomisa mentioned earlier how Utata would greet everybody he would walk past. And I mentioned that 10 months ago in January, we met at Orlando, where he used to box, where we began this journey of NM100. And Dr. Tokyo Sikwale was the guest speaker. And he related a story about how him and Tata were backstage or in a holding room for an event. And they chatted and it was wonderful. And they went out and Tata was greeting everybody, and there was Tata Tokyo Sikwale as well. And Tata Tokyo Sikwale said, no, it's okay, Tata, you've greeted me. And he pulled him and he said, hey, Mamela Pokotin, listen here, boy. Those people with the cameras don't know that we've met already. They're going to think there's a thing between us, so just come here and give me a hug. And that's also the character that Mr. Holomisa speaks of that we need to carry. Because we are this incredible nation. We call ourselves the Rainbow Nation. The global world, global media calls us the Miracle Nation. They said this at the inaugural Nelson Mandela Culture and Arts Day at the press conference. And an Italian journalist, and he stood up and he said, why do you call yourselves the Rainbow Nation? And we explained ourselves. And he said, no, but it's a miracle what you have achieved. Can we not forget that miracle? It is with great insight that our CEO said, yes, we are starting the celebration of Dr. Nelson Mandela and his centenary. But we had to respect Dr. Oliver Tambo, and that's why it has been quiet until now. Had to respect Utatu Sisulu, respect Usobukwe. So as Mama Miriam once said, bahleli bonke etilongweni, bahleli bonke kwanongqongqo, bahleli bonke ngoku ezulwini. They are together now in heaven, the very 7 heavens that opened up to bless us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention.
This is the hour the world has been waiting for.
Nelson Mandela began his walk to freedom, raising a clenched fist, unweakened by more than a quarter of a century in jail.
18 July 2018 marks 100 years since the birth of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. A life worth remembering, celebrating, and honoring. A life devoted to building his vision of freedom and equality for all.
We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races in this country.
He gave his all to the making of a just society, but there is still much to be done.
I have cherished the ideal of democratic society with equal opportunity for all. That is an ideal, he said, for which I am prepared to die.
The Nelson Mandela Foundation seeks to honor and advance his legacy through a series of activities and events under the banner of his centenary year.
Thanks, Mr. Mandela. Okay, thank you.
To do so, we have created a new brand property and brand identity. We have developed an iconic mark that is true to the life and times of the man himself. The imagery is emotive, positive and strong, yet simple and practical. Local yet global, a reflection of the past and an inspiration for the future. The symbolism and associated artwork captures elements of Mandela's life in their most raw and purest form, combining the struggle, the incarceration, and the liberation into a commemoration of his 100 years. The unique typeface is inspired by and recreated from Mandela's personal letters. The word mark provides the necessary detail of his name and the centenary year, and then closes off with a slogan and call to action intended to motivate the world at large to find the Madiba in themselves and to be the legacy. Finally, the anchor of the mark recognizes the foundation as the custodian of his life and times and a committed facilitator of his legacy. This new brand identity for the Nelson Mandela Centenary is as bold and strong as he was and will serve well to promote what he asked of us, to help live his dream. And so it is that we are very proud to share this with you.
It is in your hands to make of our world a better one for all. It is in your hands to make a difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Mr. Sello Hatang.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ausi. You know, the opening that you gave us reminded me when you came to visit the foundation for the first time. I've never seen you cry so much. Those people who watch the idols, you've never seen anything. Just take it to an archive, you'll see. You know, just this week, Bantu Holomisa was hauled before the management committee for the fact that I don't respect protocol, Prof. Apparently, they're going to report me to you. And I told them that Prof doesn't know protocol. So they said they will take us both to a protocol, to protocol lessons. But now we've been given an out. We can now tell them that you can tell the story again about Madiba and protocol, right? But then you know, we knew we had the right guy in Bantu Holomisa when one of my team members looked at his WhatsApp photo and it says levels Mfondini. So we knew that you maintain a particular level. So I'd like to thank you very much, Bantu Holomisa, for your wonderful speech. Over your career, it is evident how much you were able to learn from Madiba and his manner of engagement. The idea of a principled compromise is an important one that speaks to many of our engagements, both politically and socially. Too often, we see compromise as weakness. But often compromise illustrates strength in character, or it should. However, in South Africa, we've also become accustomed to forgetting the principle behind the compromise. Our compromises should never disadvantage the most vulnerable, which has become the norm in our country. And you were saying tonight, don't normalize the abnormal. Thank you for reminding us that if the Chris Hani moment ever to hit South Africa again, the question will be, who will be our Madiba who can be trusted to stop the carnage? Trust in institutions and individuals have fallen apart, is what you were telling us. It is your speech that then led to our MC asking the question which we like asking, do you remember where you were when Madiba died? It's a question that you're saying we shouldn't be asking, if I read you well. You're saying we should be asking instead, where were you when Madiba's legacy was destroyed? We've noted some of the projects that you've suggested, including the forestry one. But we also want to tell you that it comes with money. Because, they will pay for it. Okay. Because some of these things are important to be done, but will knock at your door at the right time. It's been said that Madiba was able to bring out both the best in people and the worst. Whilst more often than not, we see the shining lights of people deeply inspired by Madiba, we also seen how people latched onto him, used his name, exploited his legacy. The recent Public Protector's report is the latest and one of the more visible of how a deep love and affection can be exploited even in a time of mourning. It is in the spirit that we're saying 2018 should be about building a values-based society. Next year, in 2018, the centenary of Madiba's birth is a period in which greatness can be achieved using the name and legacy of Madiba. However, it is also a period that we must exercise caution against the threats of corruption, criminality, and unethical behavior. In Feb this year, we publicly launched, as the MC noted, the NM program. We called on South Africans and people around the world to reach out to us with proposals of projects. Two key messages underlined this campaign. One was to engage in transformative change in whatever way possible and to be the legacy. And the second one was for people to be reflective, as you reminded us again today, and to find Madiba in ourselves. As a foundation actively involved in projects, we also sought to critically reflect on our role. We will use this year to accelerate our centering of critical social justice issues using the centenary as a platform. We will also use this year to elucidate, explore, and discuss the history, meaning, and legacy of Madiba. Over 100 submissions were received directly by the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and we'll be working closely with at least 50 projects next year in a supportive and advisory role. The projects we have chosen are multifaceted and diverse and span library and school projects, sports programs, horticulture, the environment, education, research, the arts, media. You name it, is most probably there. The projects extend across the continents, and we have accepted proposals from countries including Argentina, whose ambassador is here, Australia, Canada, the US, China, Brazil, France, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Mauritius, Portugal, Spain, Switzerland, the UK, and of course, South Africa. Some of the incredible projects that will unfold over the year with which we are partnered include a collaboration with Miyagi, and they are here in the audience, an established NGO which tours the world with an orchestra made up of young people from disadvantaged backgrounds in South Africa. These young people were trained by top performers and teachers to play string instruments and will be supported in developing careers in music business after the year 2018 will be dedicated by them to Madiba. Robert Brooke, who is the director, is here in the audience somewhere. There is, if you can please welcome Robert. We will partner with a fantastic social enterprise headed by 3 energetic and inspiring young people on the Tsimu Youth Debating Competition. I'm told they are not here in the audience, they are downstairs. I must tell you that they are led by this young person, Machel. She's a young woman who, when the 2 guys were doubting to send me a message, she said, I'll send it. And she sent it. And I responded, and they are here tonight. So I want to thank them all for the kind of journey that they want to travel with us. They want to concentrate on building Madiba, or activating Madiba as the activist, Mandela the governor, Mandela the philanthropist. Could those you'll meet them downstairs because the three of them are there. We have, of course, met with the president of FIFA when he was here, and FIFA will also dedicate a game, we hope, to Madiba. The KNVB, which is the Dutch Football Association, will also coach 100 new coaches in South Africa in memory of Madiba. Unique people with unique talents will use these talents to create something extraordinary for Madiba in their own special way. Keith Kirsten, who is also here, I think maybe he's downstairs, a horticultural company have bred a unique rose to be named Mandela, which will be sold across the world, and the Nelson Mandela Foundation will be the beneficiary. Prof, I know you've been wanting to buy Mempodi rose. This is an opportunity. We will use this opportunity to engage with the legacy of Madiba and for people to understand what Madiba did for South Africa and the world. 4 confirmed TV series will be aired globally and have been planned in dealing with different periods of Madiba's life. Other exciting projects include a couple shops, for example, that in the OR Tambo and Cape Town International Airport, which again will be a way for us to interface with those who come in and out of the country. And all the stuff that would be sold there would be things that we would have said they can then be used to reach the world. We have partnerships with the Reserve Bank, something that we'd announce later, and the Post Office. This is just a fraction of what we hope to be a transformative year with enthusiastic and talented stakeholders and supporters. Outside of partnerships programs, the Nelson Mandela Foundation will build and leverage the excitement and interest to inform, expand, and highlight our critical projects. We'll apply an intersectional approach to all our work, focusing on gender, race, and class. Our work will focus on deep structural issues as well as our outreach work to respond to immediate needs and concerns. I just need to note that our last event for the year will be with the government of Gauteng. I don't know, Prof, I think you were trying to avoid to run, but I thought you signed up, that you're going to be running the Nelson Mandela Remembrance Walk and Run, which will be joined by Ndade Bizos and Limeso Filibre. No, you're laughing, but it's true. They have been joining every year with Machel, so we're hoping again this year they will be walking that long walk. When I asked last time, you laughing at this, why are you doing this thing? I asked Ntate Mlangeni, and he said, for as long as God has given me some breath, I will run a walk until I build a country of my dreams. So on the 10th of December, we hope all of you will join us. In terms of keeping the legacy and history of Madiba alive and accessible in 2018, as Prof noted, our digitization project will continue and gather momentum, and the next stage of process will be able to make the archive accessible virtually. This means that Madiba's extended family in the Eastern Cape, in the deep rural Eastern Cape, will be able to access this archive. That my little niece in the Northwest, Ona, would be able to immerse herself in Madiba's world in a way never seen before. So we hope that you will then come back again and you'll see what you're going to do with the digitized archive. The ability to see the candid photos of Madiba, his letters of love to his daughters from prison, his wife, and his reflections and self-doubt in his journal entries humanizes him in a way that we could never imagine. That is the type of legacy we want to speak of in 2018. We'll use one of our biggest campaigns, Mandela Day, to facilitate global activities of Mandela Day in order to guide the development of messages and activities through the engagement of stakeholders, guiding projects across the world. Mandela Day will focus on sustainable and measurable projects, and the NMF will be the focal point. And for us, the issue of dealing with poverty and inequality again will be at the heart of Mandela Day 2018. With the help of Mama Machel and the team at the NMF, an exciting new book project will be launched, and which is one of a number of book publications that will be coming through. It will be a labor of love from all involved in the NMF, and I want to give a special thanks to Sam Fenter, who's been leading this project and who's been managing this project very well. So if you can please give a hand of applause. Over 2018, we will use research undertaken over the last 4 years as part of the Mandela Initiative to create a national conversation on poverty and inequality. You're asking that we amalgamate some of these initiatives. This initiative is aimed at ensuring that at least on the issue of poverty and inequality, we pull it all together. I want to remind you that for the last 3 years, we've been focusing on the issue of building a more united society, inclusive society, as it were. Thomas Piketty, 2 years ago, came and addressed us on the issue of poverty and how it's a ticking time bomb, as he said, if we don't deal with inequality in our country. Ndebele Gates came also and did the same thing and reminded us that until such time that we deal with stunted growth of children because they don't have access to good food, good nutrition, we will be doomed as countries and as a society. This year was no exception. We had a very good speaker in Mayor Amina Mohammed, who again told us that until we include women in every boardroom that we have, until such time that we make gender an intersectional issue for all to be concerned about, we will be doomed as countries. And it is in response to these 3 lectures that next year will then be focused on ensuring that we build such a nation that's more inclusive. In 1990, Madiba stated that the democratic project in which we are all interested cannot succeed unless the economy can deliver. Let us make the economy deliver for all. Building a functioning democracy means that we must also build a functional and equitable economy. And we believe we can create the space to have a conversation on an alternative economy. This economy should include people like a person that we have forgotten, a young Michael Komape. Don't know how many of us remember him. He died in a pit toilet. Just access to toilets has become a big issue in our country. I want to tell you a story that I shared recently that a few years ago, we wanted to build a library in a school in Limpopo. And the principal gently wrote to me and said, no, thank you very much for the library, but that's not what we need toilets. So I drove there to go look, why would someone reject the toilet, which we were then providing. And when I went over, I saw these little girls walking from the bush back into the schoolyard, and they had a bucket there where they washed their hands. And the principal then turned to me and said, that's what I wanted you to see, that my children are vulnerable to being raped, to being killed in the bush, because we don't have proper sanitation. So we had to help build a toilet. So we did that. Then we had to get the water pipe to the school. And it's only then that the principal said you can build the library. But now, what this means is that we're putting our communities in a very difficult position, where they have to choose between proper environment for our people, to just learn, for our kids to learn, and having to just have access to books. And I think that's unfair in every society, and I think Madiba would agree that in honor of Michael Komape and his family, we must make sure that 2018 helps give access to the most basic of needs of our people and not divert 300 million rand towards projects that shouldn't be done. A few months ago, we hosted a closed roundtable session with filmmakers on race and identity in film. 2 brilliant activists and creatives, Sarah Summers and Kelly Eve Koopman, joined as respondents. You may know them from the successful web series called Colored Mentality that engages with the complexity of being colored in South Africa. During the dialogue, Kelly and Sarah displayed the critical thinking, talent, and willingness to open themselves up. Their labor of love, Colored Mentality, leverages technology to create a space for deep dialogue. They also remain committed on a grassroots level, working with young people and hosting dialogues. They will now, in 2018, join our first cohort of AFRI Fellows, 11 South Africans who will begin their tours in the US and in South Africa. Brilliant activists working on dismantling anti-black racism will be provided with finance, education, and spaces to engage with one another for a year, developing a network across continents and particularly in between the US and South Africa. This thanks to Atlantic Philanthropies for having made this possible. 2018 must speak to their work. 2018 must work toward dismantling structural and the structures of inequality and racism. 2018 is about empowering people like Kelly and Sarah and making sure that the work they do goes to scale. If 2018 is to do anything and be successful, is to ensure that we have access to the archive and stories of the archive. 2018 is about challenging ideas, finding solutions, speaking truth to power, and holding people to account. 2018 is about instilling a love of reading in a library, of using a proper toilet. And 2018 is also about extra days that a child will spend in school because she has access to sanitary pads. 2018 is about Madiba, and it is about us. It is about our better selves and finding something special in us. I was asked today by one of the journalists, don't you think that by the end of 2018 we'll be Madiba out? By year end we'll be fatigued. And my response was, Madiba wasn't fatigued. Madiba wasn't South African out in pursuit of a more equal and just society. And may we never tire to live up to Madiba's untiredness in attaining justice. So as we find the special part of ourselves, the better part of ourselves, we must use 2018 as a unique year. We must make every special day count in this year. It is about dreams, all of our dreams, because Madiba was a dreamer. But he was a dreamer who acted too, who believed in solidarity, that in my mother tongue would say, Matlo Hoshama Bapi, that if my house burns, my neighbor should feel that theirs also burns. To quote Madiba, the anchor of all my dreams is a collective wisdom of mankind as a whole. We hope that 2018 will be that anchor. The project of NM100, we hope, will help build a different society, a society Madiba will look up and say he's proud of. I'd like to, at this point, ask you to please join me as we watch Ntate Jeff Radebe, Minister who couldn't join us today, unfortunately. He's the longest serving cabinet minister at the moment, who served also under Madiba's government. And he's the chair of the Interministerial Committee of Parliament, and he's the one who's going to deliver a message on behalf of the state.
We are gathered here at the tail end of what was declared and celebrated as the year of O.R. Tambo. We used this period to reflect on the legacy of this gallant leader of the liberation struggle. I had the singular honor of chairing the Interministerial Committee on the O.R. Tambo centenary celebrations. It is almost impossible to speak of O.R. Tambo without mentioning his close friend and comrade, Nelson Mandela. Tambo and Mandela met on the soccer field as students at the University of Fort Hare in 1940. They struck a friendship that would last a lifetime. They joined the African National Congress and played an instrumental role in the founding of the ANC Youth League in 1944. Outside the political arena, they were also the pioneers in the legal field as they established the first black-owned legal firm in the history of South Africa in 1952. Tambo was succeeded by Nelson Mandela as the president of the ANC in 1991. It is such a coincidence that these close companions and friends succeed each other even in their years of birth. As we conclude the O.R. Tambo centenary, we begin the Nelson Mandela centenary. The whole world has been celebrating Nelson Mandela Day for a number of years now, but next year's installment has to be something very special, as the 18th of July 2018 will mark what would have been Madiba's 100th birthday. It is an honor and a privilege that I've been appointed by the President to serve as the chairperson of the Inter-Ministerial Committee for the centenary of the late President Mandela. When President Mandela ceased to breathe on this day, the 5th of December 2013, he left indelible footprints in his wake. Madiba left a legacy of selflessness, of resilience, and of devotion. Although the popular revolutionary song Akekho Ofana Naye intimates that there is no one like him, it also implores us to emulate his selflessness. As a government of South Africa, we are deeply committed to upholding the legacy, the principles and values that President Mandela cherished as the founding father of our democratic society. Those of us who had the privilege of working closely with Madiba know that he always insisted that as a leader, he was part of a collective. His successes were the successes of the people. When we celebrate his legacy, we must reflect on his different dimensions as truthfully as possible. In 1998, President Mandela made one of the most profound observations about the distortion of his life and legacy. And I quote, "One issue that deeply worried me in prison was the false image that I unwittingly projected to the outside world of being regarded as a saint. I never was one, even on the basis of the earthly definition of a saint as a sinner who keeps trying." Close quotes. I was privileged to serve as a minister in the first cabinet that President Mandela appointed as the first president of a democratic South Africa in 1994. Under his stewardship, our country adopted one of the best constitutions in the history of humanity. We owe it to the President Mandela's visionary leadership that today our country is a constitutional democracy well into the 23 years of freedom and democracy. I trust that as we honor the Nelson Mandela centenary in 2018, the whole world would join hands with us in celebrating this global icon. This will present us with a wonderful opportunity to reflect on the legacy of Nelson Mandela. We'll also use this opportunity to promote peace, to deepen democracy, and to fight to protect human rights as some of the deep values that Madiba espoused. Mandela meant different things to different people and would like to reflect on the various aspects that Madiba represented. The Nelson Mandela Centenary IMC will be responsible for planning and coordinating the centenary program befitting the legacy and the heritage of Mandela. The IMC is comprised of ministers from relevant government departments, including arts and culture, basic education, communications, cooperative governance and traditional affairs, defense and military veterans, higher education and training, international relations and cooperation, police, public works, sports and recreation, and lastly, water and sanitation. These ministers will be supported by senior officials from their respective departments, as well as the technical committee chaired by the Director General in the Presidency, Dr. Cassius Lubisi. The IMC will be working in close collaboration with the Nelson Mandela Foundation to ensure that we develop a program appropriate for someone of Madiba's stature. We have begun with our engagements with the foundation, and I must say the program is indeed promising to be a great one. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a comprehensive plan for the centenary of Mandela. And Mandela belonged to all of us, and it is our objective to ensure that the national program is as inclusive as possible. The plans for the launch of the Nelson Mandela Centenary, as well as the details of the program, will be announced in due course. As I conclude, the ancients say, when a big tree falls, the earth is bound to shake. This rings true of what we witnessed on that fateful day 4 years ago. The passing on of Nelson Mandela 4 years ago shook South Africa, it shook our African continent, and it shook the whole world. It is therefore befitting that as we reflect on the legacy of President Mandela, the whole world must join us in honoring this global icon. This is a clarion call to all South Africans and the world over to honor Madiba in his centenary. The celebration of Mandela's legacy is the celebration of the triumph of the human spirit over the greatest travesties served on humanity. Let us make 2018 the year of Nelson Mandela.
Thank you very much. Whenever this day comes, one is reminded of the pain of the Mandela family that the Mandela family must be going through. And I always say the same thing every year, that your pain is ours. At this point, I'd like to ask Graca Machel to come and say a few words to us.
Yes. Thank you, Bantu, for such a stellar address you have granted us today. And thank you, Sello, for the very rich and diverse program you have outlined for the celebrations of the 100 years of Madiba. I must say I'm shaken, so today it's not my day. But I want us to leave this place relating that 2017 is the 100 years of Oliver Tambo. Next year is 100 years of Madiba. It's 100 years of Mama Sisulu. And it's 105 years of Tata Sisulu. I'm sure this is not a coincidence. It has to tell us as South Africans, particularly as South Africans, that people are born, they live, and they die. We must celebrate what they have given us as legacy. But more importantly, we have to take this nation to the highest levels possible. They have done what they could have done. And Madiba in 2008, when he turned 90, he was already preparing us that he might leave any time. And he said to us, "It is in your hands." I just want every single of us really to take seriously that message. It is in your hands. It is in my hands. It's not in the hands of anyone else. We can hear agonize about how our society is what it is today. We can even, as Sello was asking, how can we explain that the legacy of all those, it's not of Ndebele, of all those, how can we explain that it slipped through our hands? The answer is it is in our hands. It is not only, as we say, because the government is doing this, the leaders of these political parties are doing this. It is us. It is in our hands. I wish 2018 will help us to identify nature and take them to the heights. Young people, we need to identify a younger Sisulu, a younger Albertina, a younger Oliver Tambo, a younger Nelson Mandela, a younger Kathrada, a younger Lutuli, a younger Winnie Mandela, a younger, you name it. This country is extraordinary. It cannot in many aspects be compared to many other African countries I know of. This is a singular country in which, in a certain generation of its history, had the most extraordinary leadership as collective as anyone else has never produced. Think about this. Think about this. If this country, a century back, was able to produce all those leaders, which I didn't name all of them, for goodness sake, it has to be able to produce new leadership which is going to stand in their shoulders. It has, we cannot have any doubt, it has to produce a new crop of that collective, because it is in South African genes. It is in South African DNA. There's no reason why we will feel like we don't know where to go. We don't know what's going to happen. And no, we have to identify they are amongst us. Literally, they will not come from anywhere else. A new leadership of this country to stand on the shoulders of those we love so dearly, we respect so much, we are so proud of, but we want to be even prouder than those in 21st century are going to be. This is what I want you to live with. I want you to live with this. There has to be. So you and I, it is in our hands to identify them, nurture them, and let them lead us in these challenges of our time, and if you like, of their time, because they are younger than us. And then each one of us, wherever you are working, wherever you are living, in different ages, do identify, nurture, give them space, so that you'll have different layers of leaders of this country. Those I'm talking about today, they will be in the 20s, 30s, but identify also those who will be in their 15, 18, because that it is. Mandela, Sisulu, Tambo, Masisulu, all of them, they were as young as anyone else. They started exactly when they were young. They were not different, and those we are looking for as leaders of this country, they are not different from those. So, South Africa, it's in your hands. Stand up and take it. And I believe of all the activities which we can pledge and we are going to implement as the celebrations, we should get to the end of 2018 having some kind of clarity of who are the new crop of leaders of this nation, standing on the shoulders of those we are celebrating. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am, for those really heartwarming words. As you were talking about extraordinary leaders, I want to remind us of the fact that this week we said goodbye to a giant of the struggle, Ntate Eddie Daniels, who spent 15 years on Robben Island and was a close friend of Madiba's. We went to see his family as the foundation during the weekend to pass our condolences and to remind them again that their loss is not just theirs, but for all of us. It is because of people like Uncle Eddie, as we called him here at the foundation, who supported Madiba, that Madiba became who he was. It is because of Uncle Eddie, who stayed out of the limelight, that we are free today. His generation of leaders are fast dying out, with a sense of uncertainty about the future, of what the future holds for South Africa and the world. And it's that uncertainty, I think, that makes some of them to keep going. We also wish we also must wish a quick recovery to Ntate Laluchiba, who suffered a heart attack and is recovering in hospital at the moment. Our thoughts are and prayers are with him and his family. May you recover speedily. Our thoughts are also with Ntate Dennis Goldberg, who has suffered ill health recently too. You are with us. There are a host of people we need to thank tonight. We have chosen to be part of this project, and we can't possibly thank everyone who need to be thanked. You'll also notice a few names revolving through the night on the screen downstairs of the people who have made this possible. I want to single out Sheila McGivleray here, and her team of the creative geniuses who have worked tirelessly on this project and came up with the logo that you saw. The hard work of David Minnar, who actually put a lot of work on the corporate identity of Nelson Mandela 100. I just got a note to say I should remind you that the handle for Nelson Mandela Centenary is N Mandela 100. I want to thank ABSA Bank, who have come on board in a big way. ABSA have already committed to building libraries in schools across South Africa. a mountain bike project for kids, and have committed fundraising for our endowment. You have to clap for them, please. It's people like Andrew Dunn, who's sitting here, who have immense respect for Madiba, who have really put their money toward keeping the legacy alive. And Andrew, thank you very much. The Post Office and the Reserve Bank, who have been long supporters of our work, we thank them. The Hans Seidel Foundation, who have been supporters of us for years and have supported much of our deep dialogue work. They have also funded this event tonight. They are part of a wonderful and supportive group of project donors, including Ford Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who help us toward dismantling unequal structures of power. Distel, who are sponsoring their venues and hosting bespoke events next year for the benefit of the campaign. The Totem team, who Prof thanked earlier on, who have put together this incredible exhibition outside. I'd like to please urge you to go and check it out. I think they're all here. If they can please stand up, the Totem team who are here. Totem team? Oh, they're downstairs. They must be developing a new exhibition again. The SABC Foundation, whose CEO is sitting here, thank you very much, Ausi, for all the work that you've put behind us in supporting our work. I'd also like to thank the speakers tonight. Njabulo Holomisa, you always push us, and we appreciate that. Minister Khadebe, in your absence, and of course, our Imbongi, Jessica Mbangeni, the Soweto Gospel Choir. I have to tell you that tonight I vowed to join them, and they had agreed. They had agreed. No, don't clap yet. They had agreed that I should join them tonight, and then I auditioned Prof. Within like 5 seconds, they said, no, I think you should go downstairs. So they've dismissed me pretty quickly. Vote Keller and your partner, Tolsi Pillay, thank you very much again for the work that you've put. The Soweto Gospel Choir and Voter have just put out the CD, and they've actually been nominated for one of the awards. Okay, it means I'm declaring it. Finally, the NMF team, the millions of people around the world also who have made this possible for us to remember Madiba's memory. I think as we close, and I'll hand over to us, Unathi, we need to remind ourselves of the words that Madiba said. And I like repeating them every time, that he said that if there's one question that should bother each one of us every morning when we wake up, what am I doing to help build the country of my dreams? That's the question that you should leave with tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the formal program. We thank you profusely for joining us. We thank you for giving us your time and your resources. Time, something we cannot make more of. So thank you for committing and giving us your time, because it is declared next year is already successful. We're going to be blessed during dinner. We have Grammy Award-winning performers in this room, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Wouter Kellerman is going to perform for us during dinner, as well as the Soweto Gospel Choir. Please, can you join us downstairs? Aren't we spoiled? Please, could you just join us downstairs for dinner? Good night and God bless. Thank you.